Hey there, quirky folks! I'm your host, Anna, and today we're going to look at the prospect of White Walkers in House of the Dragon. You could argue that they were amongst the primary antagonists in Game of Thrones, or they at least felt like a much bigger threat than Cersei, who couldn't do much against an overpowered Dany and was taken down by a bunch of bricks. Game of Thrones obviously had more cards to play with. It involved all the prevalent houses, the wildlings, the White Walkers, and many other elements.
Hold on.
But House of the Dragon, on the other hand, has mostly been about the Targaryens, with the likes of the Velaryons and the Hightowers playing key roles in the story as well. But there is no sign of the winter villains, the White Walkers. And right from the beginning of this season, people have been asking whether the Night King's army will have a presence in the show. Well, they obviously haven't shown up until now. So that only leaves the finale, or the next season, for them to show up. But people have been inquisitive about them because they have been mentioned a couple of times by King Viserys. He spoke about the prophecy of the prince that was promised. Aegon the Conqueror established the Targaryen rule in Westeros. But upon his adventures in the north about 80 to 100 years before King Viserys' reign, he did witness the whites beyond the Great Wall. In Viserys' words, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. It was to begin with a terrible winter gusting out of the distant north. Aegon saw absolute darkness riding on those winds, and whatever dwelled within could destroy the world of the living. So, he believed that to battle against this mega threat, all of Westeros must stand against it. And if the world of men were to survive, a Targaryen must be seated on the Iron Throne. That's why Aegon thought that a future Targaryen prince will unite all of Westeros to defeat the armies of cold and dark. And this was obviously done by Jon Snow and Daenerys, who turned out to be Aegon's descendants. But clearly, the White Walkers do exist during the era of the House of the Dragon. If you look at their history, they were first created by the Children of the Forest as a way to battle the first men. And this happened 8,000 years before the House of the Dragon's timeline. They broke away from the Children after that. And then came the longest winter in the history of Westeros, which was known as the Long Night. This was when the Whites descended upon Westeros and attacked the living. But the Westerosi people actually managed to win the battle and push them far into the north. Then the Great Wall was created to keep them away. The battle at Winterfell where Arya kills the Night King takes place in 298 AC, and King Viserys died in 129 AC. So there's still over 150 years left for them to officially show up. But will we get a tease in House of the Dragon? I don't really think so, because this series is about the fall of the Targaryens. We'll be witnessing a lot of in-house Targaryen civil wars. First, there's the Dance of the Dragons. Then as future kings like Aegon IV, aka Aegon the Unworthy, show up, there will be a bunch of Blackfire rebellions. But where are the Whites right now, and what have they been up to? The general understanding is that after their first defeat against the Westerosi people, they had been lying dormant for centuries. They were rebuilding and strengthening their numbers very slowly. They didn't attack until Game of Thrones because after their previous loss, they didn't want to suffer another defeat. They wanted to make sure that this time, they'd win against the world of men and leave no one alive. But that obviously didn't happen, as things didn't go in favor of the Night King. And speaking of him, many theorists began to think that Daemon might go on to become the Night King. Well, let me put a pin into this theory right now. Even though Daemon's death wasn't clear in the books, he still can't be the Night King. It is already known that the Night King is a member of the First Men, and they touched down in Westeros from Essos 12,000 years before the Targaryen conquest. So, the Targaryens weren't even around when this first man was turned into the supposed Night King by a child of the forest. And with this, I'd bring my video to an end. Hit the like and the subscribe buttons if you enjoyed it. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.